Okay, let's finish up with chapter 11, personality. Last time I talked about objective assessments. Hopefully, you explored the internet and decided to take one, and projective assessments. And we looked really carefully at the house tree person. But I promised some cheaper versions. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever been to Santa Monica. Specifically by the pier. But just the other day, I was there, August 2004, and I saw Estrella. Now, Estrella managed to, for a quarter, give me my future and talk about my personality. Here's a card that came from Esmeralda, one of her sisters. She has multiple sisters. And it says, you have been living every day, eating, drinking, sleeping, a little work and a little leisure, day in and day out, month in and May. Well, that sounds like my life. Why? That's quite accurate. At the pier at that time, they also had the personality tester. For a mere 25 cents, it would tell you what kind of person are you. You just merely slip your hand on this apparatus and it'll give you your future career. Some of you are going to become an actress or a drugstore or a store cowboy or a moocher, right? Based on this information, you may even quit your job. I was in San Francisco just the other day, February of 2019, and they have a mechanical museum that has a lot of these machines. So it's not just limited to the local ones, are a little bit closer. You can try all kinds of things. Now, I have to tell you this story. I was driving around, got a little lost when I first moved to California. I got off the exit and it said Main Street. And so I got out of my car and I was like, where the heck am I? I know I'm in Orange County, but I don't know exactly where I'm at. So I looked and I saw this Mexican restaurant and Elvis Presley was singing on top of the restaurant. And I thought, I must have died because I love Elvis and I love Mexican food. So this is it. And then I saw a rubber stamp store and I love rubber stamps, right? So it's like, okay, this must be it. So I walked into the rubber stamp store and the woman says, you must be here for the festival. I said, what festival? She says, what festival? The Strawberry Festival. I said, well, where is it? She's here. Can you guess what city I was in? Well, at the Strawberry Festival, I saw this machine and I got freaked out. I got freaked out because this is the personality analysis machine. I haven't seen this since I was a kid back at the State Fair in Detroit, Michigan, right? And so for a mere couple dollars, all I had to do is sign my name. They put my signature into this machine. All the lights went off, and voila, it produced this printout of my personality. I'd like to read a few things. It is your nature to fight defeat. How did it know I was Spider-Man? I wasn't even wearing my mask. So you can spend literally hundreds or thousands of dollars going to see a licensed psychologist to get tested using projective and objective assessments, or you can spend just a few dollars heading over to Esmeralda, or if you can find it, the personality analysis machine. So let's talk about theory. Of course, Sigismund Shlomo Freud, you know him as Sigmund Freud, right? Sigmund Freud, of course, delved deep into the arena of psychoanalysis, now known as the psychodynamic theory, this notion that, if you recall from the Big Six, that unconscious is driven by sex and aggression, motivations of sex and aggression that gets us to do all kinds of things, and we're not even aware why we do what we do. And of course, he produced what I like to call the three-part personality theory. Here we see the traditional image of the iceberg, and typically the iceberg is represented because we don't see most of it. Most of it is underwater. He broke it up into three main categories. It is the animal inside of us. It is based on the pleasure principle. It's that part of us that just wants it. And when does it want it? Right now. So We need immediate gratification. Think of a 2-year-old in a toy store, right? Think of a sociopath who's arrested and said, when asked, why did you kill that person? And he says, or she says, I wanted their car. So Freud made the id a huge component of our personality. Counter that with what's based on the ego ideal, the superego. That's that little voice in our head that says, do the right thing, right? So highly religious people, I'm looking at, this is one of the saints, highly religious people are supposedly strong in superego. So the superego is battling with the ego during this time. I'm sorry, with the id during this time. And so enter the referee, which the ego, I like to think as a referee, is based on the reality principle. It's hard being totally superego, doing the right thing all the time. It's dangerous being id all the time based on the pleasure principle. So the ego serves as a compromise, right? Something that can try to meet the needs of the id, try to meet the needs of the superego, and make a compromise. So here we see phenomena. Uh, the id doesn't want to do it. Superego is like, you should do it. And then the ego tries to compromise. And this will happen with some of you when it comes to doing a paper or studying for your homework or the exam. You might think to yourself, mañana. You might have the mañana syndrome. I like to call it mañana syndrome. I'll do it later. And the superego is like, no, you need to do it right now because you have time now, right? And then your ego will make some kind of compromise, maybe study a little bit and study a little bit more, right? So Freud says that we're in constant battle with these three components. And I want to ask you right now, which component you think is strongest in your personality, right? And you might say, well, it depends. If I'm with my friends, the id kind of comes out. Or if I'm celebrating my religion in some form or fashion, I'm very superego, right? But generally speaking, if your ego is strong, then you have a pretty good balance in your life, right? Freud also says that we use a series of defense mechanisms. These mechanisms keeps the anxiety, keeps the frustrations, keeps the overwhelming feelings away from us. So in other words, we got all this stuff hidden in our unconscious, and some of it seeps through to the surface. Some of it, for example, through dreams or through humor, through neurotic behavior. That's the message, that stuff that we're dealing with, that we pushed away, is starting to come to our conscious mind. So we employ all these, what I like to call suits of armor, to protect ourselves. Things like repression. You see those hands? They're pushing something away. Or things like displacement. I call it kicking the dog syndrome, where you don't get mad at your professor or don't get mad at your boss. You take it out on your little dog, right? Or things like projection, right? We talked about projective tests, where you project all your feelings onto someone or something else. So you see, there's a variety of things that we use, even sometimes denial, right, that protects us. I don't want to give the illusion that it's all bad, because they do protect us like a suit of armor. But if you were going to walk around a suit of armor and it's boiling hot outside, you're going to get exhausted and overheated pretty easily. It's like the movie where you see people stuffing stuff in a closet, and eventually there's too much stuff, and sooner or later somebody's going to open it up and all the stuff's going to come pouring out. That's what the theory's talking about. Freud went on to talk about what he calls psychosexual stages. If you remember Erik Erikson, uh, son of Eric, right, talked about the psychosocial stages. Freud talks about the psychosexual stages, arguing that sex and aggression play a role. The oral, anal, phallic, latency, where we kind of take a time off, and then genital stages. And he said that we go through these stages, or we get fixated in them. and we can't function very well. Now, of course, his nemesis, Carl Jung, disagreed and said that Freud really placed too much emphasis on sex and aggression, and that led to this movie being made called The Talking Cure. And I got all geeked up and said, "Yeah, a movie with Freud and Jung." And it wasn't that action packed for me, but um, it just further complicated the relationship between these two men, who once had a father-son relationship, then turned into something quite horrible. Of course, Freud had his distractors, one of them being Karen Horney, and she constantly had to correct herself. Here's another image of Karen Horney, right? And she argued that Freud was correct, that we do have things hidden in our unconscious, but that the way he approached it from more of a male perspective wasn't quite accurate. Right. Now, for years, I was telling my students that I would one day love a copy of Carl Jung's Red Book. And only a handful of researchers has actually seen it, because the heirs of the Jung family, here's some of his ancestors, or his grandchildren, I should say, kept it in a vault and wouldn't allow people really to examine it. And they refused to publish it. They finally published it a few years ago. Here's the content of it. And lo and behold, as soon as I heard it was published, I got my coupon from the bookstore. It was Borders bookstore at the time. I went down there, and the book was like $500 or some high amount. And I just immediately left the bookstore and I said, "I'm not buying it. I'm patient." And I would tell the students that story every year. And in one year, they actually got their money together, bought it online, and gave it to me. So I've donated it to the psychology lab. And if you ever want to see it, come on down and take a peek at it. All right, time for the review. One question I'm going to ask you is to describe the one projective test we did in class, that would be HTP, and the one objective personality that hopefully you explored online, so you can do a little comparison and contrast. I want you to be able to have those skills. The other question deals with Freud's three-part personality theory, including which part is you? Do you think the theory is valid? Why or why not? Remember, for any of these questions, more is always better than less. So be specific. All right. Thank you for your attention. I always appreciate it. Take care.